Alright students, here again is the second video for week 3 about the 3.1 assignments. So let's get right into it. Make sure I'm minimized there. Now remember, we finished looking at this stuff up here. If you did not for some reason look at video 1, it'll be titled something like My Video 1, and then it'll tell you what it's about. You'll want to look at that one first, and then look at My Video 2, which will be this one that I'm doing right now. So at the bottom here you have the project resources document in case you need it again, but that's the one you've already probably chosen your article from and everything. If you need to go back to that, obviously go ahead. But the main thing you're going to look at is you're going to decide, okay, you should have decided I want to do mine in MLA or I want to do it in APA. Whichever you choose to do, that's what you're going to pick here in the way of an exemplar. Now, it seems to me like most students like to use APA, so that's the one I usually bring up and kind of talk about. But what I say about the APA will relatively be the same as for the MLA, just some differences in formatting and stuff. Okay, so click on that, and it will bring this guy right here up. And there we go. Computer always runs slow, so it'll take a minute. Come on, here we go. Alright, so finally it came up here. Now as you can see, this, just ignore this bar up here. It's trying to use an account that I don't have active anymore, but I can still show you what's going on here with it. So make sure that so this again is the APA version of this collection of sources. Now remember, the collection of sources is actually what we call the annotated bibliography, but you can just put collection of sources here if you want to. That's fine. And then your name, of course, will go here. Keep this, put my name here where it says professor, and then put the date. The date, I usually tell my students to put the due date, just because that way they can set it and forget it. They don't have to worry about changing the date ever. It can just stay the due date. So that's what I would do there, is just change that to the proper due date, then delete this part. Remember, anything in brackets should be deleted and from your actual paper. So delete that, and then you go down here and you put your title again. Now this title can be changed. You don't have to put this title exactly. You could give it a more direct title, or maybe add to it a subtitle that relates more directly to your topic. That would even be better. You could do that if you want, but that's up to you. Now it should be page number 2. They're not showing you any page numbering, but technically speaking, you usually want a page number things like this, but I probably won't quibble about that since it's not showing it up in the exemplar. But notice how this exemplar works. Is what it does is it has this kind of information here, right, which is the actual paper. That's the actual exemplar. That's the actual paper that was written. And then along the way, it will provide these elements in brackets, in bold. Those are just kind of instructional. That's just for you to help you understand what's going on here. So when it says the purpose of research is identified, it's basically talking about this here being that purpose of the research. So that's what the bold parts are doing. You should delete that. You might keep it in yours until you've fixed it and done it, and then you can delete these before you turn them in. Okay, I don't need to see these parts that are in bold, so you can delete those after you've finished writing the whole thing if you want, and that would be fine if you want to do that. So that's it. That's how this works. You have the information in here, and then you have in bold these little notes to you telling you what's going on, what they're doing here. So notice the next one says, and will help me to develop an argument as to why and how districts should provide health care for part-time faculty. Again, this is the final sentence that identifies the reason for the topic, interest, right? Why he's interested in it, and how the research will support the writing process. So everything here is instructional, telling you what they're doing here, what's going on here. So just make sure you keep that in mind. All right. Your revised question, you discuss that. Again, same thing, note telling you what they've done. And then you talk about your potential answer. So notice this all follows exactly to those directions we already looked at in the previous video. The potential answer is the research question, which is essentially just your hypothesis, right? And then in my essay, I will use some sources from faculty unions and organizations. So this is just a description of what kind of sources you're going to use, right? These sources, it says, are biased in that they advocate for faculty. So remember, this part is about kind of bias and how the biases are in there and how they work. Obviously, some sources like this one here, specifically, for example, will be biased in favor of a specific group. Like in this case, it's biased to faculty. So it's going to talk to them directly, which means it may not talk so much to other people, right? And that might come across as a bias, but it may not necessarily be a bad thing. All right, so you just kind of have to reason through that yourself and think, is this a bias that would make it problematic? Or is this just a bias that's simply focusing, right? That to me, this is more of a focused bias rather than a really bad thing, right? And this is, however, they are also respected organizations that have been able to make improvements and blah, blah, blah. So they go on to talk about that and how that's going to affect things, right? Again, you got your notes here telling you what they've just done in the previous sentence. And then you get to your diverse perspectives part, which you write. Notice none of these have real terribly long paragraphs. And then that brings you to the actual source list itself. Note some important things to note. Obviously, this one is an APA, so you want to make sure that you do all of your entries in the chosen style. You don't want to have some of them APA and some of them MLA. You got to make sure they're APA. Now, one of the key factors to tell that you're doing it right is to see this right here. Whenever you see a date in parentheses immediately following the author's name, that means it's APA. That's your giveaway, right? That's one of the quickest giveaways, is the fact that there's a date right there, because it's very obvious. It stands out. Normally the date's not in parentheses, and it's over here somewhere past the after the title in MLA. But in APA, it's right there after the author. Okay, and the author, of course, is also just going to have a first initial, then the last name. But you got to make sure you alphabetize these according to the first word here. So Heredia, I don't know I'm not sure how to pronounce that, and I'm probably butchering it. So notice you have the entry properly done according to the MLA or APA requirements, as you would see in the Superior Library under APA. Okay, and then you're going to have, notice the paragraphs. This article on the KFF Health News website reports on the conditions of employment. So basically this summarizes what it's about, right? So start the resource description with a summary of the article. Research description should also include specific references to content from the source and how it relates to your argument. So that's what they do in there. Then the second paragraph is this article is credible because. So that's where you discuss why you believe the article is going to be credible and how it's going to help or hurt your argument, and preferably help. Obviously, if it's going to hurt your argument bad enough, you wouldn't keep it in there anyway. You would probably just delete it from your ABIT or your source list. So you're going to talk about why it's good and how it's good, right? And then the third paragraph is where you're going to talk about how it's relevant to your research question. And notice none of these paragraphs are quite as long as they look because of the bold stuff. If you take the bold stuff out, it wouldn't be quite as long as it looks. So don't forget that. The bold just makes it look long, a little longer than it really is. So these are probably not more than 3-5 sentences, or so. So that's how you do each entry. Each entry should start with hanging indent. That's another thing you want to make sure you do correctly, is this right here, hanging indent. So you want to hang indent that. I personally like it if you hang indent everything. So like if the only thing was sticking out here was this, and the author's names, if the last name was the only thing sticking out and everything else was all tabbed in, that would be great. I like that way because I think it looks nicer and neater and smoother. But obviously that's up to you. You don't have to do that. You can do it just like it shows in this exemplar. But you want to make sure you have each entry alphabetized in ML or in APA style, with three paragraphs doing what they're supposed to do for each paragraph. Notice this HIJ, and then you have the third one K, right? And that's how that works. That's all there is to it, really. That is literally all there is to it. Notice how much shorter these paragraphs look without the bold in there, right? So that's all they need to be. Okay. One last thing I do want to bring up, I'm going to get rid of this so that I can do so, is I want to touch on the rubric. Again, the rubric is very good to use, but I don't really think it's great. This is just my personal opinion. This is how I look at it. I don't think it's the most important thing to look at the beginning. I think that all this stuff will be shown to you and illustrated to you. That's the big point. That's why the exemplars are so important, because they show you not just what to do, but how to do it, and even how to reason through your decisions, what to put in it and what to do. All right, so that's why the exemplars are so much better, so much more important, I think it is, to write with those exemplars. Like, put them side by side with your writing and just follow them as best you know, without copying them. I think that goes without saying, right? But the rubric is a good thing to use sort of as a checklist. Like when you're all done, you've revised it, edited it, you've maybe even had a tutor look at it, whatever. And before you submit it, you just go through this checklist and you say, okay, is everything good? Do I feel like everything I've done is 100%, or is any of it fall under this? So the key is probably to look at this, to look at the 75% needs improvement box, because it tells you what kind of things are going to be sort of erroneous. The problems, potential problems, could be errors or omissions. Areas of improvement by things like clearly making sure you state the purpose of the research and elaborate on it and stuff. So that's one that you can tell a little bit more details. If you've done all that and more, then you're probably going to be in the proficient. Pretty much simple as that. I always tell my students it's better to go above and beyond than to go broke, so to speak, right? That's probably not the words I actually used before, but you get the idea. It's better to go a little above and beyond than to just shoot for the medial, right? And because sometimes if you shoot for the medial and you don't hit it very well, then you're down into the really poor grade, right? So shoot for this, but use this kind of to help you guide it, right? So do this and then some, and you'll probably be up in the proficient. In other words, when I say and then some, I'm talking about like elaborating on the stuff that you write for this. If you just provide the answer to this straightforward and nothing else to really elaborate on it, then it's probably not going to be up here. It probably just will be the needs improvement part. So if you want to get that 100% proficiency in everything, go a little above and beyond. Do more than what it's asking for a little bit in these need improvements parts. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions, as always, let me know, and that will do it for this video.